Well, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. This is Amos Tarfa. I am here with Dr. Jerry Sweetford, and I am excited to learn about engineering. What does it take to be a world-class engineer? How can we prepare people for the future of engineering? And so, Dr. Sweetford will introduce himself shortly. I'll give you a few updates about his life here. But yeah, thanks for joining us. We're going to go for about 50 minutes. You can always type in your questions in the chat. So, how did I meet Dr. Jerry Sweetford? Well, Dr. Jerry Sweetford reached out to me last year. He started a podcast, the Faith Science Podcast. We'll link it in the description. And basically, he just asked if I would be willing to come on the show and talk about faith and science. And I was excited. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, this is so cool. I think LinkedIn is for serious people. I love LinkedIn. I mean, it makes sense. And so we got on the podcast. We did an episode, and then we did another one when I was at Cambridge. And by God's grace, we have to do one together at Cambridge. That's our next level. So I'll see you at Cambridge, Dr. Seaford. But yeah, so I've started a series where I interview people in different careers, engineering, medicine. And I want the people to not just know their stuff. I also want them to tie it to their faith and how they live, right? It's not enough to just know about engineering. How can you be an engineer that goes above and beyond and also just I want him to share about his life. I want him to give us advice. Um, every one of the mentees or mentors I invite, I'm hoping they can provide insights into our lives so that we can grow beyond where we are. So, Dr. Jerry Sweetford, it's been great getting to know you, and I'm excited to have you share with my students. So, who is Dr. Jerry Sweetford?
Okay, so it's spelled like Sweeford, but it's pronounced Swafford.
Oh,
So that
sorry.
might make it, no, it's fine. It might make it a little easier to pronounce, but it's Swafford. Pretend that the E is not there.
Yeah.
That's how you would pronounce it. So, my name is Jerry Swafford. Yes, I have a PhD. It's when people call me doctor, it still doesn't feel uh, right, but I'm a doctor. I don't come from that kind of thing. I'm the first PhD in my immediate family. My parents did. My mom went to college. I ended up going to one of the colleges, or I went at one of the colleges I got two of my degrees from is where my mom went to school, but she didn't finish. So I like to think that I got two degrees from there. She can have one of mine. Um, so yeah, but my background is from Nashville, Tennessee, and came from the inner city. And my parents were believers and raised us to believe in God, but also to do well in school and to do better than they did in anything that their parents would have done. So I didn't have any examples to look at in terms of becoming an engineer, but I just kind of continued to progress forward. So I started off with a math degree from Freed-Hardeman University. Then I have a mechanical engineering degree from Tennessee State University in Nashville. Then I got a master's from there in engineering, and then after that, I thought I wanted to go into research. So I figured I needed to get a PhD. So I moved to Huntsville, Alabama, and got a PhD in mechanical engineering from the University of Alabama in Huntsville. And so at each point at each of those degrees, what I found is that I was moving more and more towards the field of robotics. And so I started out in pure mathematics. And from there, I wanted to do something that was more applied, so that pushed me in the direction of engineering.
Mhm.
While in engineering school, I was connected with a professor that was doing research with a robotic arm. That seemed cool. So for my master's degree, I worked with robotics. My thesis was about actually uh, multi-copter drones, and so basically intelligence behind multi-copter drone swarms. And then after that, when I moved to Huntsville, my thesis advisor, who is now actually, I work at a startup and he's the CTO there. Um,
Mhm.
he uh, he told me, I've got three projects for you. I've got an underwater vehicle project. I've got a aerial vehicle project, so UAVs, basically drones. And he said, I've got a humanoid robotics project. And I remember when he said those three, and that the humanoid robotics just seemed really cool to do that. And that's what I worked on. And basically, I was using AI to create controllers for balance and stability in humanoid walking robots. And so now I'm working with a humanoid robotics startup, we don't have legs yet, but we're thinking about putting legs on the robot. And when that happens, then that's obviously up my alley. So that's kind of the quick summary of career from basically from college on. And so yeah, happy to answer any questions. And I mean, I have if I think last time we were thinking about talking about strategies for becoming a mechanical engineer or something like that. And so
Yep.
I got a few of those, but we'll just kind of go however this takes us.
Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing those. If you don't mind, maybe I'll let you share that and then I'll open it up to questions. If you don't
Sure.
mind sharing, do you want to, are they like PowerPoint slides or just, do you want to just
No,
share?
no slides or anything.
Okay,
I like to. So I like to think in terms of questions.
okay,
Just about anything. I saw that you posted on WhatsApp. Hey, my engineers and problem solvers. So I do want to say that engineering is all about problem solving. And when you think with an engineer's mind, it's not just for an engineer problem. It's for all kinds of problems. And so
yep,
you attack everything. So sometimes me and Amos talk about business or various things like that. And you can apply the engineering problem methodology to everything.
wow,
And it allows you to really distill things down to what it's really about and then try to solve that. Um, some of you may know of Elon Musk. He has been quoted as saying that one of the things that really smart engineers do sometimes that they shouldn't is solve a problem that doesn't need to be solved. And so sometimes as an engineer, we'll get a problem, start working on it, but it may not even be the problem we should work on. So if I were to give some advice just to start with, the very first question you should ask is, how do I know that engineering is a direction I should go in? And so that's going to require, you're not just going to know because you sit down and think about it. You're going to know because you explore. You're going to be looking at different interests related to science and technology and mathematics and engineering as well, of course. You're going to be doing hands on activities. If you figure out that maybe I don't like the physical part of robotics or something like that, but I really like coding, then that's good. You could go into computer science. But the very first question here is, do I really want to do this? Now, I'm told that sometimes, if we have some people from Nigeria here, that sometimes being an engineer is viewed highly, and so you might be thinking, well, that would be good. My parents would want me to do this, but maybe you don't want to do this. And what I would say is, again, it doesn't mean you can't go into engineering, but you would like to know, is that really what you want to do to start? Would be the first question I would ask, because you would hate to, for example, be in a PhD like I was. I was in the PhD for a long time, and if I didn't choose that project wisely, that I wanted to work on humanoid robots, and it didn't matter if it took me 10 years to figure out how to get the thesis done, I would do that. If you don't have that mindset when it comes to your career, it will be very easy to get burned out and want to go in a different direction when you are furthering your career. So that would be the first thing. Like that's why things like this webinar are good. You can talk to real engineers. You can maybe potentially shadow one if you know one. I didn't really know anything like that, but sometimes people ask me about shadowing me. With the startup, it's not really a traditional atmosphere, so they don't really get to do that with me. But I'm sure you can find an engineer that you can go and kind of see what they do. Is that something that excites you? Is that something that you would like to do? Be thinking about that now, and don't just assume. Is what I would say. That would be the first thing. I don't know, Amos, what um, when it comes to that's kind of more career advice than it is just specifically engineering career advice. But
no, no problem. No, and you can go ahead with any of the other strategies if you want, and then we can
sure.
go back and look at them. Please, those on the call, feel free to take note of which strategies you want him to go back to. But if you don't mind, maybe even answering the question of what was the hardest class you took, and then flow right into what are some general strategies. And we even have someone on the call who plans to get a PhD. He's already has a bachelor's in mechanical engineering. I'll introduce you to him after as well. We have somebody who wants to go into data science on the call, and we have somebody who wants to go into civil engineering. I love electrical engineering. I don't know why I'm biased towards, well, my dad was an electrical engineer. So anyways, I tend to like the mechanical electrical people more than others, but I need to repent of my ways. Anyways, go ahead and share what was the hardest class, and then let's go from there.
Okay, so the hardest class I've taken was not some graduate level 700 level class or something like that. The hardest class I took was a thermodynamics class. It was probably a junior level class when I was in engineering school. It was probably my second year of engineering school. So I had already gotten the mathematics degree, and then I was at a different university working on my first engineering degree. And this class was taught by the dean of the College of Engineering at Tennessee State University. He is since not there anymore, but this is what you would call in engineering school a weed out class. A
Wow.
weed out class is a class where you've got to get past it in order to graduate. And it is a class at which many people fail, maybe fail multiple times, and they determine, okay, I'm not going to be an engineer then. I need to go into a different profession. It weeds out the the people that kind of think that they want to be in engineering but
Yep.
aren't able to get past it. So that's what this class was. Now the interesting thing is that the class itself wasn't necessarily all that difficult, but it was that it's a different kind of material. So thermodynamics
Yeah.
is a specific area um, that is not really up my alley in terms of thinking about machines or thinking about robots and that kind of thing.
Yes,
So I
sir.
got into class, and the way this teacher taught is you do the homework, and if there was anything wrong with your homework, um, if the math was wrong, but if there was any mistake, then the entire problem was marked wrong. So if you got three homework problems, you would get a 0, 1, 2, or 3 out of 3. That's how he graded it. And the homework actually carried quite a bit of weight. So I'm a new transfer student there, my second semester, I guess, there. And I'm getting zeros on all my homework. And my grade is terrible because I'm getting these zeros on homework. By the way, he graded quizzes the same way. If anything was wrong, you might have the right answer, but if anything was wrong, then it's a zero for for that problem. So I'm getting zeros on these quizzes and these tests, and or these quizzes, and the tests weren't going well either. Homework wasn't going well at all. Now the thing I didn't understand until midway through the semester is that you could actually resubmit homework for full credit. So if you went back, fixed everything, and resubmitted it, you could get full credit. Now, he never said this in the class, but all of these people who had failed the class multiple times knew about this. And I just didn't know, and I wasn't talking to people. So, yeah, this is another like life lesson.
Yep.
Don't try to be the loner and too proud to talk to people and that kind of thing, because I didn't find out until midway through the semester where I'm actually trying to get together with people because I'm doing so poorly. That's when I found out, oh, you could actually resubmit this homework and get full credit for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but by that time, my grade was very low. But what it did was it caused me to really focus. And so one of the things I'm most pleased with about that class, I ended up with a C, by the way, for the class. I think it's my only C in college. But I'm more pleased with that C than I am with almost any grade that I've gotten because it was my first time. Many of the people in the class, maybe half, had already taken the class and failed it multiple times. So I got a C, and even though I had done so poorly in the first part of the class, and the final exam or the final test, it wasn't the exam, but it was the final test, I got a perfect score on his test. And so for him to give me a perfect score meant he could not mark anything off on my paper. And that felt really good to do that. So by the end, I understood thermodynamics very well, but because of the way he graded, it forced you to not make any errors, to not make any mistakes in order to do well. So that is the most memorable class. It is my favorite C I've ever gotten. I don't know that I even had another C in college, but that would be the 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 class I think about. Now, I just got a couple of other things to think about when it comes to engineering. One of the things that is somewhat related to this class, by the way, is you want to be constantly thinking how you can learn by doing. You don't want to just try to learn by just kind of reading a textbook and figuring out these engineering concepts that you're reading about. And so engineering is applied science. That's what it is. So if you're not applying science and mathematics in some way, it's not engineering. It's just something else. And so you want to be to where you're good at taking concepts from mathematics and science, physics, and these various areas and figuring out how. So like one day me and Amos are going to get together. We're going to do kind of like a rocket project or something
Yeah.
to kind of guide students through this kind of thing. But you have to think about how do I apply what I'm learning to a physical project is what you need to think in terms of. And you could code something as well. But one of the things I'm always big on is really trying to get students to think in terms of projects. If you can work on projects, that's where the learning actually comes, and that's where you're actually able to apply what you know. And so it gives you better understanding. And by the way, if you are wanting to create a portfolio, so when you're wanting to go to engineering school and that kind of thing, then having projects that you can show is a good way to do that. Now, the other thing I would say is once you're in engineering school, let's say you're already there and you're in engineering school, one of the things I would counsel engineering students to do is figure out how they can get real world experience. So that's just a step beyond what we're talking about with projects. Projects are where you are coming up with the project and you're doing work in something that you're interested in. But real world experience would mean finding a co-op, finding an internship. Every summer in engineering school, you should be doing an internship somewhere. You should be doing a co-op of some kind. That is, again, further real world experience than just a project that you might be doing. This is what's going to bridge the gap between the theory that you're learning in engineering school and actually being a practicing engineer. I'll say that if the schools you go to are anything like the schools I've been to in America, often you have engineering professors who are not practicing engineers. They have degrees in engineering, but they don't actually necessarily work in the field. And so you really want to, as much as possible, be around people that are working in the field. Because what you'll find, for example, Amos talked about electrical engineering. I took about half of my PhD coursework was electrical engineering, and I would be in classes with engineers. And it was funny because we would be talking about this theory that we'd be learning, and they'd say, "You can't actually use that though." And they know from experience, we cannot use this controller, this really cool theoretical controller that we're using. We can't actually use this in real life. So, or at least not yet. The theory that we're talking about in class is not something that is actually applicable. So it was always funny to me to see things like that where they know because they're in the field, but they have to take this really obscure sliding mode control class
Yep.
that you can't really use. So you want to be able to get real world experience as quickly as possible. And so that might be internships of some kind, that might be co-ops. If you have your dad as an engineer, like in the case of Amos, that can assign you some kind of project, you want to be trying to get experience that will help your confidence and that will help you grow into becoming an engineer. And all of this goes back to really the initial thing we were saying. You will know more and more that that's for you if you're doing these projects and you're excited about the work that you're doing. But if you just find you just never want to do any of this stuff, you go to an internship and it doesn't go well, that's really helpful information. One more thing, and then I'll hand it back over to you. Is so I had an internship at NASA when I first moved to Huntsville, and it's NASA. And so like my family was excited because it's NASA. I mean, everybody knows NASA. When you're thinking about engineering, it's like, okay, wow, like so I would go back to Nashville and I'd have cousins that I barely knew that were like, oh yeah, I was telling people my cousin worked at NASA. And so it was really everybody was excited. So the first week there was fun. We were going around and we were doing stuff, and the last couple of weeks was fun. We were going around and doing things, but the work they had us doing as interns, for me at least, I was sitting at a desk. I was one of the things they had me do was I had to go through all of the launch vehicle failures from the past. So like the different shuttles that didn't launch, and I'd have to go back and find information about it and figure out what happened and why. And I know this was important, somewhat important to NASA, because even after the internship, they called me back to make a presentation to some people there about what I had learned that summer. But I was at a desk 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for 8 weeks. The whole internship was 10 weeks. So the first week we weren't really doing that. And the last week, maybe week and a half, we weren't really doing that. I was miserable being at a desk for 8 hours a day. And so this is really important information to know. Okay, if there's a job or if there's a position where I have to sit at a desk and sit there and go to have my little 15-minute break 2 or 3 times and then a 30-minute lunch, if I have to do that for any prolonged period of time, that is not going to work. And that is the thing I learned from my NASA internship. But it was extremely useful because moving forward, like I said, I'm at a startup, so it's not this go in and sit at a desk all day. So knowing that is very helpful, and it's things like that that you will learn. You might be not necessarily learning what you want to do, but you might learn what you don't want to do. Now, I just want to say that doesn't mean that all NASA positions are like that, but I'm just saying that the internship I had was like that, and it showed me, okay, I don't want to do that, and so let me make sure I'm not in a position to do that anymore. So let me throw it back over to you.
No problem. And I'll give us an opportunity to ask questions, thoughts, comments, objections here in a couple of minutes. Let me just do this, and then I'll turn it over to some questions and answers. One of the things that Dr. Sweetford talked about is one of the most difficult classes he took in college. And he said, when someone asked him the question, what was the most difficult class you took in college? I laughed. Here's what's funny. Mine was the same class. It's just that so the class that was the most difficult for him was the most difficult for me, even though mine was called physical chemistry, thermodynamics, and kinetics. So it was the same thermodynamics. So thermodynamics is the culprit. That's the problem. We got to deal with thermodynamics. So, but
Yeah.
here's the thing. I was almost like well, I got a C in that class, by the way. But anyways, I bring that up to say, first of all, you can get a C and be okay. Okay, that was one of my first ones that I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna make it through this thing. I dreamt that I actually failed the class, and I woke up and thought, oh no, that was a bad dream, because I'd never failed a class in my life at that point. So, anyways, the point is this, young people. Number one, some of the most successful people in life, they face setbacks. Some of them failed, quote unquote, but they did okay. I wonder sometimes, I'm like, people don't realize that at the end of the day, like, who knows what grades I got in my high school senior year? Like, who knows anything about my grades, right? Who knows anything about, I don't know your GPA from high school, and I don't even, it doesn't matter anymore, right? But what have you built? What have I built? What am I trying to build, by God's grace? What am I doing with the life God has given me? That's way more important than just saying, yeah, I got an A in chemistry. Yeah, so what? I can't build clean water systems yet, because I'm going to build clean water systems by God's grace. But my point is, young people, don't allow the grades to make you think your life is, oh, my life is not as it should be. So number one, thermodynamics is hard. So why don't you start studying now? By the way, the young people on this call have an advantage. They have AI tools. They can actually say, teach me thermodynamics with this, which that's one of my questions, is maybe tell us how AI can kind of affect learning and all that. But before you go on that, the second thing, so number one, young people, don't worry. Some classes might be more straightforward, some might be more interesting, but Dr. Sweetford said, talk to your professors. That is very important. Talk to your professors. Don't be, again, the one who asks questions can go further. Don't try to be proud and think you got it figured out. Collaboration is also important. So, Dr. Sweetford, I'm going to encourage everyone on the call. Please feel free to send in your comments. While they do that, I have one more place. I actually put this on my Facebook wall too, so in case people have questions there. If you are watching this on Facebook and you have a question, feel free to put it in our chat on Facebook. Dr. Sweetford, can you just touch on AI and its use in engineering and anything with learning? And then let's go back to collaboration. How important is collaboration in engineering?
Yeah, so let me start with AI as a part of a collaboration. Let's say the way you want to think about AI is as someone that can help you to to learn for sure, because you should always be thinking in terms of being a lifelong learner. There's not a point where you just understand it all. If you think that once you finish engineering school, that's where the learning stops, then that's not what we're saying here. You finish engineering school, I finish a PhD, and people tend to think, okay, that's the end of learning. No, it's just really starting now. I know how to learn now because of a PhD. So you should be a lifelong learner. You should want to think about AI almost primarily in terms of how it can help you learn. So let's say you're using ChatGPT or something like that. What you want to do is tell it as much information about where you are and where you're going, or where you were where you're aiming yourself as much as possible. Tell it all of that information. And then again, you want to tell it also what its role is going to be. So you want to tell it you are a seasoned engineer with a great deal of experience that is a lifelong learner, that you as an engineer are mentoring an engineering student. You want to give it all of this information and have it guide you and give you various types of ways that you can learn. So there are YouTube videos. You can have it walk you through various types of information. So for example, if you were going to learn thermodynamics, what I would what I would do is not have it teach you as a professor only, but you would want it to be a professor that's really an adjunct professor that also is doing work in the field. You want to give it all of that information so it can then give you ways to have real projects. You want it to assign you projects that you can work on that will help you learn more about the project, so about the concepts of thermodynamics and engineering. So primarily what you want to do is have it brainstorm things for you that you could be learning about, and you're not going to not learn using AI. You're going to use it to help you learn. And so the way you know if you're learning well is that you're engaged with the material. If you start getting bored, then that's probably because you're not seeing it connect with things that you're interested in. So you want to make sure that as you're using AI and having it assign you projects and go through lessons, that you are engaged with what it's giving you. And if you're not, then tell it, okay, I'm not really engaged with this. So clearly I'm not learning the way I should. So give me something that's more engaging. Here are my interests. Give me a project that's related to what I'm interested in, but that will also help me learn these things. And it will give you things like that. But you want to, with AI in general, you have to guide it properly, or else you're just not going to get the result that you wanted to. Because as somebody who works with AI and has for some time, it's not that it's actually intelligent, it's actually just artificially intelligent. It looks like it's intelligent, but it's really just a pattern recognition algorithm. That's really all it is. So you should already be practicing how you can make AI your training or study partner as you get closer and closer to high school. But if all you're doing, or I don't know if there are high school students or college students, I don't know who's all here, but if all you're using AI for is to like come up with cool pictures or something like that, that's not the power of it. You want it to be helping you learn more and helping you improve and become and move in that direction of engineering. So be thinking of AI as that.
No, I definitely think that a lot of the people on the call, well, actually, a lot of our students in general in the GAP program are high school graduates that are preparing to start college. But we do have several on the call, on the webinar, who are going for their master's and PhD also on the call. So we're going to have a more in-depth conversation with them at some point. Those who are already, they know, I mean, they have a bachelor's in mathematics and one has a bachelor's in mechanical engineering, so they know where they're headed. They want to get a PhD in mathematics or data science or PhD in mechanical engineering. And so
Okay.
that's that. But then a lot of the students are just about to start their bachelor's in engineering. So I love some of what you're sharing, and I think that we can give them even an assignment. Because the last time we talked with some students, they were still in high school and they had schoolwork and all that. I'm going to say something now that might be a little shocking to parents coming from a nerd like Amos, but I think one of the worst places you can be right now is in school. Yeah, let me repeat that. One of the worst places you could be right now is in school, except if you're using AI to your advantage, or at least you're learning how AI is working so that when you're done with school, you're not behind. Why am I saying this? There are some people I know right now that have been told, oh, yeah, you can't be distracted with AI stuff right now. Just focus on your school, get your grades, and then figure out AI. It's like, no, 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 that's not going to work. You're going to show up to your, when you graduate and say, hey, I have a degree. And and it's going to be like you came with a typewriter. They're going to tell you, nope, no thanks. We're not interested. The paper is not what you need. What you need is start solving problems now. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't go to school. I'm just saying if you're going to school for the school's sake and feel like you just want paper, that's not enough anymore. So what should you do instead? Be the best you can be in school. Like this time, if you're in school, make sure you're being the best you can be, knowing that there are tools available, AI tools to help you learn much more effectively. When I was in school, we didn't even have YouTube working well. Like YouTube just had cats and dogs. That's what we had. And how can I be? And the textbooks haven't changed much from when I was a student to now. So if I was struggling to understand thermodynamics and all I had was my textbook and a professor, now students have a textbook, a professor, AI, Google, YouTube. I mean, come on. Like, if you have a C now, I feel like you just don't care. Like, that's the new normal for me. If you get a C, it's just, I don't care. Because if you talk to your professor, if you use the tools and everything, you should probably at least be able to pull in a B, right? Or maybe even an A. Now, if you get an A in thermodynamics, email Dr. Swafford and I, okay? That's special. That's that's something. I had a classmate in physical chemistry that got an A. I don't know what that guy was eating for lunch, because I was eating and I was not getting an A. My food was not working. The nutrients were not getting in the brain. It was a painful experience. But here's what I forgot to say from earlier. Dr. Swafford, I went for my PhD course in chemistry, in physical chemistry, one of my courses, and you would be happy with me, sir. I almost pulled in an A. I had learned a lot from those undergraduate days, and then I went back to when I went to grad school. It was kind of a battle, the battle to win, and I thank God we survived. So, AI can be very useful. We should probably do a whole webinar of just some more notes and strategies for AI. The students in the GAP program actually go to a venue on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, and they have internet and everything, and they're ready to learn. So we're gonna maybe jump on a call with them at some point and just talk about how to use AI effectively. Are there any questions from anyone on the call? Go ahead and type in your question, and then when we stop the live stream, I'll let everyone into the same group, and we can kind of have a conversation for maybe 5-10 minutes. So let's take another 5-10 minutes first. Are there any questions anyone wants to type in? And then we'll go from there. While they're typing their questions, Dr. Swafford, let me pull up my next question here. If someone is in middle school and they know that they want to be an engineer, like they love tinkering with things, their mind is like, I love math, I love tinkering. What advice would you give them? This would be somebody who's about 13 to 16 years old. What advice would you give them at that stage of their life, especially when it relates to mathematics and the pace at which they're learning mathematics? Because the school system sometimes I feel like is not moving at the pace of what they need to be learning. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, yeah. So this is a good question about education, because I would say, so I went to one of the best high schools in the state of Tennessee, where I probably one of the top academic high schools in the state of Tennessee, and yet a lot of the times I honestly was not challenged in the math and science. So I made straight A's. One of the things about making straight A's, it means that you probably aren't having to try that hard. And so I was taking calculus as a junior in high school, and I was taking statistics and multiple physics courses. And yet still I look back now and I could have done more and I could have gone farther, but it wouldn't have been through the school. It would have had to have been through something else. And I think that's what you're getting at here, that we want to do more. So if you're in middle school, one of the things that you want to do is find a curriculum. I know it's funny because we got to talk about this offline. My sister was like, wasn't there somebody on your podcast one time that had this curriculum about math? So my nephew's 7 years old, and she's already thinking in terms of, I want to make sure that he can go as far as possible now, And so something like counting to calculus, for instance, would be something that you want to think in terms of you want to push the limits of what you're able to do mathematically now, because that's just going to allow you to do even more in the future. And if you can master these concepts now, what you're able to do in engineering school is you're not going to have the same kind of struggle. So yes, be learning mathematics and physics and use projects. This is what I'm going to continue to just harp on projects. Use projects that are going to force you to learn the mathematics and physics that are that are that you will need to be able to accomplish the project, and then explain to other people what you did. So for example, in the case of if you were going to shoot off a rocket or something from a certain location at a certain angle, and you want to know where it's going to land, that there's calculus, there's math, there's other mathematics, there's physics related to that. But if you were going to do that project where you could with reliability shoot a rocket at a certain angle and know where it's going to fall, and then be able to explain your project to someone else, then that requires a mastery of several different ideas from mathematics and physics that you currently don't have. And that's fine. But when you get to the end of that project and you're able to explain to somebody how you can know where that rocket is going to fall, and then you can actually do the experiment, and then you're going to have to deal with wind flow and all that stuff too. But if you're able to do that experiment, let's say indoors in a gym or something, and you're able to show someone else what you've done, then that will require a mastery of the theoretical concepts, but it'll also require you to learn all kinds of things about how to actually, in practice, create this thing. So, again, I would say you start from, okay, I want to learn these theoretical concepts. Then you can use AI to say, okay, I want to create a project. I'm interested in these things. Combine that into a project where I have to learn these concepts to accomplish the project and then be able to explain it to someone else. Because one of the things I will say about that dean of the College of Engineering at Tennessee State University is that he forced us as often as possible to make presentations. And he had this throughout the curriculum. It's great if you're a great engineer and you can do and invent things, but if you cannot communicate what you have learned, then you're only going you can never truly be a first-rate engineer if you can't also tell people what's going on. And as engineers, we are notorious for not being able to communicate well, and for not having people skills. But that is an important part. Amos mentioned collaboration earlier. If you're a great engineer but you can't collaborate well, that's not going to be good for your team. You're not going to accomplish great things from an engineering perspective. So the people skills and the soft skills are also important. You need to be able to tell people what you've done and explain it on a level that they can understand. It doesn't do any good to use all of these huge thermodynamic terms when people don't know what that is. You need to be able to not only do these things, but also communicate them to others. So that's what I would say. In middle school, you can already begin to be working on projects that are of interest to you that will also allow you to learn these things. And school is not going to, again, let me say American school for the most part is not going to show you to do this. You have to do it proactively. And if you don't want AI to take your job or to take the jobs that you want in the future, then you need to be AI proof now, and you need to be AI proofing yourself now and showing, um, because there are all kinds of things that we can do that AI is not going to be able to do. And so you need to be learning those things now. So that's what I would say to the middle school.
Thank you so much, Dr. Swafford. There is a question for you that, if you don't mind, you could look in the Q&A while let me know if you see that there. If there's any other questions, let us know as we begin to wrap up our session. Let me see. I'm going to check quickly to let me see if there's any question. Okay, well, I will before you answer that question, do you see the question?
Yeah, see it.
The longer question. Okay. I think that, Dr. Swafford, I want you to talk a little bit about one of the things we talked about one of the first times that had to do with in a startup scenario and how to have a place where talent can be coming from. So in a sense, it's almost like investing in a middle school, high school engineering academy type place that can then pull into startups, right? Because since the last time you and I talked about a year ago, I've been learning how to do business a little more. I've been hanging out with some people that you know too, that like their videos on YouTube. I'm trying to learn how to better serve and how to just sustainability and business operations, all of that. And I think that you can definitely help us think differently about education. I think the education system needs to be handed over to engineers, like right now, like officially. Can the U.S. Department of Education, can you call the engineers, just give it to them, the National Corps of Engineers or anybody, just give it to them and say, can you please fix this? Because the data came out, the national report card, American education, it's not funny, but like if your child just goes through a typical American education, I am sorry, they are not being prepared. They are not being prepared because the jobs that are coming in the future, a lot of them, we start getting into global opportunities. Somebody from Singapore could apply for a job with someone from Houston. Like, who are you going to take? One of them has calculus and calc 2 and 3, and they want to be an engineer and they've been practicing problem solving skills. And then you have somebody else. Oh, I didn't have to take calculus, so I didn't take it, and this and that. We're just not preparing our young people for success in American schools for the most part. I don't even know what our goal is, because it's not like we're flourishing in English. It's like, what are we actually doing well in? Sports. I know we're doing well in sports. That I know. But in terms of education, America, we got to step it up. Now, this is not saying everybody else is better. I have a problem with everybody on education. Here's what I mean. Any education system that is built on grade-based learning and age is not good. It needs to be mastery-based learning. You can be 15 years old and be ready for calculus, and you could be 7 years old and be ready for calculus. It doesn't matter. Your age is irrelevant. And I can't believe we're using that kind of system in 2025. I mean, this is not 1824. Our education system looks closer to 1825 than it does to what it should be. So, anyways, I have a few thoughts on education, you might have noticed. But my point is, we need to do better. And then AI has come, and we're still teaching everybody at the same pace. Like, what are we doing, guys? Like, there's no more playing around with this. Like, we got to stop playing with children's education and let them move at the pace of their mastery. But where should they get to? We gotta raise the bar. Kids are capable of much more. The crazy thing is that the report card said 60% of kids were not proficient in reading. Like 60% that graduated were not proficient in reading. And of course, about 50% are probably not proficient in math. And the crazy thing is, proficient to what standard? The standard itself is even low. So they're not proficient to a standard that is low. Do you really think it's their intelligence? I don't think so. I think most of them just don't care. They just don't care. We got to make them care. And one of the ways we do that is bring in the hands-on learning, bring in the engineers, bring in the job shadowing, bring in the doctors, bring in the people from different fields. If I know what I want to do with my life and I know I need to learn calculus to help me get there, I'm going to apply myself to try. Like, this is basic. There shouldn't even be research projects on what I just said. But guess what? Some people are going to hear this and say, we should do a research project. No. This is common sense. Like, go get them direction and then they will learn. But we don't have direction in America. Anyways, I'm not trying to be Secretary of Education. I'm just trying to make a plug for, we need to fix the problem now. Okay, Dr. Swafford, the question is yours, that is laid out. What are your thoughts there?
Okay, so which question are we talking about?
The long one that was posted.
Okay, so the long one that was posted was talking about I'll just read it. It says, to be honest, I have several interests. I have a passion for pure and applied mathematics, and so I'm well versed in advanced math. And I have a first class in mechanical engineering that sort of makes me everywhere and sometimes nowhere. At the end, the most important thing I'm passionate about doing is making sure my talent solves great problems. How do you navigate that for furthering your next stage in career? Yeah, so when you're looking at career options, I think this is someone who is looking to
Get a
potentially get a
PhD
PhD
in
in
mechanical engineering.
engineering.
Yeah.
What I will say to you is, again, if your focus is on solving great problems, you do not need to have a mechanical engineering PhD to solve problems. You can be always solving problems now. Um, and so you don't need that for that. But again, it may be that I would be curious to know what exactly you want the PhD for. I thought I was going to be a professor initially, so that's why I went in that direction. As I was in the PhD, I realized I didn't want to be a professor, and so I was going to maybe have a research lab or something like that. And even after that, I realized I don't at this moment want to do a research lab. And so I ended up finishing anyway, but you want to have a clear North Star if you're going to have a PhD, because again, some things will come up and maybe you think that you will be the person that finishes your PhD in 3 years or 4 years, but like for me, it went on till 10 years because part of it was that I was not focused. And so one of the things I would say to you is you're saying that you're everywhere and nowhere at the same time. um, Find a focus, and when you can find a focus, then that's what will give you some clarity. And it doesn't mean that the focus can't change down the road. You don't have to figure out now what the North Star is for the rest of your life. You don't need to know that. But I would say, what is something that you can work the next 10 years on is what I would say to you. And you would know that better than I do. But for example, there are things that if I said to you, what if you worked on this problem for the next 10 years, and you go, I don't think so. Well, then don't work on that now if you think it's going to be the next 2 or 3. Only be working on things have that meaning for you. So for me, looking at how to make robots that could balance and walk on 2 legs, I was willing to work on that for 10 years. I didn't think it was going to be 10 years, but it ended up being that. And so what I'm working on now with humanoid robots, that is whatever company or companies figure out humanoid robots, it's going to change the world. That's what all the humanoid robotics companies are doing. What my startup that I'm working with are doing. We're trying to figure out how we can take a robot and not have to program it to do things, but that it can autonomously learn. And again, whoever figures that out, it's going to change everything. And so be working on a problem, like look for those kinds of problems, and maybe that leads you towards a PhD, because maybe there's somebody because maybe you find a research lab that's working on the problem that you're looking at. Maybe that leads you toward a PhD. But I would say, don't look for the PhD just for the sake of the PhD, but think about the bigger problem first. Because I will admit, I wasn't really necessarily thinking that way, but I can look back and say it would have been even more powerful if I knew what the problem was that I was working. So for you, it's okay to have various interests and background. You're talking about math and engineering. That's the same. I'm with you. And often in engineering, you need a lot of different tools in your tool belt to be able to solve problems, and you need to be able to see things differently than other people. And sometimes that's based on having a background with various things in it so that you can see problems in a different light. Often that's what we see in engineering, that we can take somebody from medicine that comes over to engineering, and they have a different way of seeing things that allows them to be able to solve the problem in a way that if we're all thinking the same way, we don't get to a good solution. So it's fine for you to have a bunch of different interests, but um, I know for me this year, this has been a year about focus. And I found that if you have 15 different interests, you'll find yourself at the end of the next 10 years not knowing what you've accomplished. But if you have one interest and you focus the next 10 years of your life on that, and again, it may not take you 10 years to solve a problem, but if you will focus over the next 10 years on one thing, you'll be surprised at how much you're able to accomplish. So I would say, you mentioned look solving big problems. I would say find the big problem that you want to work on, and that means something to you, and then that will help you figure out what the path is, because chances are whatever that thing is, there are only a few things that'll help you go in the direction of really solving that problem. Maybe it's a PhD, but maybe it's not. I don't know what it is for you. But if you just started brainstorming and saying, what is something I can work for a decade on, and that I would be pleased if I got closer to the answer, or we came up with real solutions at the end of a decade. If that doesn't excite you, then find the thing that does, and then make your career decisions based on that. That's what I would say.
Thank you so much. And we're going to bring, as I said, everybody will come on this. When we turn off the live stream, we'll just all chat for a few minutes before we run. Dr. Sweetford, I have a question though. What is the future of education in light of AI and the fact that there are mentorships, apprenticeships that can be started? Like, there are some fields I feel like we will still have degrees that are necessary, even though honestly, did Galen have a degree? Did some of the top medical people have degrees like at the level? My point is, yeah, we say that for medicine, but part of me is like, there's with apprenticeships, do we need paper? Do we like all of that is just my head is spinning. But talk about it in terms of engineering. What is the future of engineering? And even like for your startup, for example, when you guys look at, by God's grace, growing, and hopefully you solve the humanoid robot problem, but what kind of students do you want? What kind of people do you want in your startup?
Yeah. So here's the thing about a startup. A startup is not going. The way it works is it's not going to be something where somebody holds your hand and tells you what the next thing to work on is. It is almost the exact opposite of school. School gives you nice, clean problems. The problem we're working on, nobody gives us this problem and says, okay, now this is how you solve it. We don't know how to solve it. Nobody knows how to solve it. So you have to take everything you've learned and then you have to try to conceptualize what part can I solve now? So in school where everything is so structured in this way, this is partially why I keep going back to projects, is because it forces you to figure out a problem and how you would solve it and use the things you've learned and fill in the gaps of your knowledge. The future of education, I think, is in specialized learning. So I have a sister that's a school teacher, and I was helping her with some she was having to do some kind of continuing education stuff last year, and they were talking about specialized learning. And again, yeah, this would be something that you would not care for, what they're kind of trying to guide these teachers towards doing. Because they talk about specialized learning and individualized education plans and that kind of thing. And it's not. It's and they don't care to do much of that either because it puts more work on the teachers. With AI though, we have a way to actually generate individual plans much more quickly than you ever could in the past. I mean, you would have to craft it yourself, and now with AI, you don't have to do that, and you can have it craft the individual plan. But the future is not going to be. I think it's much closer to what you're talking about, that it's mastery based rather than grade based. Now, the issue is that much of this is going to have to be done in a non-traditional format, meaning homeschool, meaning uh, again, various types of things that are not run by the government, I would assume, because it takes a lot to reverse things like tenure in schools and all of these various things that really fight against changing or overhauling the system of education. So we'll need to do this in other ways. So one of the things you and I have talked about is that maybe not, again, I don't run this startup, I'm just a part of it, but down the road, uh, I would like to create a startup myself. And I think getting the talent for the startup is one of the most important things that there is. And one way to do this is to possibly invest in education at even lower levels than high school, or maybe having interns from college, but looking at middle schoolers and maybe younger and raising up kids and teaching them engineering principles and concepts and how to do project-based learning from an early age, and then put yourself in a position that your startup or your company would now be attractive to these engineers that you've helped to develop and train. That's something we've talked about that I think is something down the road. I have a cousin that is a professor, and his wife is also a professor. We were having dinner one time, and This was a couple of years ago. They were in town, and I was saying, look, I'm an engineer. I don't care about keeping the current status quo of education. What I need is good engineers if I have a startup down the road. So why shouldn't I just come in and take over this school in the neighborhood that's failing? And his wife was basically saying, but again, these schools have been here. They've been here with the community. But again, from an engineering perspective, there's not really a great answer for this, except that, well, it's going to be. She was basically saying that I'm going to be extracting all the talent out of the local community, and because I extract all the talent, then that's going to make the school worse. But the school's already bad, so I don't. You have, from my perspective, I don't. If I could leave that talented student in your bad school, or I could take them and develop them into a great engineer that could potentially come work for me. I don't understand what the problem with that would be. Um, but they were advocating for potentially maybe having an after school program or something like that. But what I'm talking about, that's just a band-aid. I don't want to do band-aids. I want to do like actually something that would develop great engineers. And I think some of that would start earlier than maybe what we currently think about. So that's kind of part of that thought. And I think just one other thing is I think this extends beyond America, right? If I can if I can help Nigerian engineers and engineers in Singapore, I mean I could potentially do that and have that same kind of curriculum where I could develop engineers there and use those engineers rather than if America is just giving me so much pushback, you might have to go elsewhere because talent is, as far as I can tell, and IQ is evenly distributed across the world. So why would I just focus on one area? Um, but yeah, some thoughts. We I don't know how we will be able to connect this to some of the stuff you're doing, but I think a lot of what you're doing is moving students to take charge of their own education and not leave it up to teachers to do it for them. That's going to be the future. That's These are the people that aren't going to have to worry about their jobs being taken because you already know how to continually learn and how to continually adjust.
You know, Dr. Swafford, I'm going to keep you for a few more minutes. Sorry. I know our time is a little over the hour here, but you open a can of worms, and I just want to touch on them before we run. Um,
Okay.
you know, I don't think people understand the current mood in education and in the workforce, especially when it comes to AI. When you look at people like Sam Altman and OpenAI and so on, do you really think their goal is just to keep the K-12 system and the university system intact? And no, they're releasing products that completely disrupt the whole system. And that's a fact. And they're not stopping. I mean, Gemini and there's this race of different tools dropping every other week. And the current education system was not ready for this. The current education system was not ready for a tool to drop in the laps of students that can write papers for them, and you don't even know if they wrote it, right? One of the things we're going to do in our GAP program is I'm going to encourage all my students to give presentations. You inspired something right there. I want them to start giving presentations. They need to learn PowerPoint and make PowerPoints and give presentations on different topics. But parents, if you're watching this and you're wondering, what do I do about the education of my child? The first thing you need to realize is study the history of education. Why do we currently have the system we have? Parents, I think that's a good homework assignment. What is the current education paradigm your child is in, and why does it exist? And what is actually best for your child? I think that's going to be important. Now, I've studied the education system, and I watch education documentaries for hobby. I don't watch movies much. I watch documentaries, and I was watching documentaries on education. And what I found out, and it's been about 10 years since I saw some of the stuff, my heart breaks for the state of education globally. In the sense that we have a system, it had its time, it was the best that we could have, but we should have always been longing for a solution. That solution has come, and we're still clinging to the old system. It's like, what are you doing? And what do I mean by that solution? A solution that can allow for personalized learning at scale. Like, that is what you've always wanted, right? Wouldn't you want your child to reach their fullest potential? Like, for example, there are children in our school system right now who could be 18 years old and be done with their bachelor's degrees in mathematics right now. They're there. And we're taking them through a system that literally steals 4 years from them. I mean, parents, we have to stop thinking about the system that we grew up in being normal for the next generation. It's actually, so here's my quote. I said, modern education expired on September 4th, 1998. That's when Google came out. When Google came out, the system actually became problematic because now everybody had access to all these books that they could not have accessed before. Now they have access. But I said modern education got toxic in 2025. What do I mean by that? Because when milk expires, you can have it after 5 days. But if somebody has it after 5 years, you say that's okay, that's bad. Modern education is actually now, it's not that it's neutrally affecting. No, it's actually bad because it's not allowing a child reach their fullest potential. That's what's bad about it. While the tool to help that happen is available. Because parents, I understand that AI can be used in a bad way. I understand all of that. But the reality, though, is you can also use AI to learn concepts much faster in a responsible way. You can do that. Why don't we teach students how to do that? Now, some teachers might say, oh, it's going to take away my job and blah, blah, blah. Here's the reality. Some kids are so bored in our classrooms. Like, we're literally sucking the life out of them. Is that what we want for the child? Hopefully not, right? So what does the role of a teacher look like in my world? Number one, we need more teachers, not less. I'm not saying we don't need teachers. Here's what I do think. We need more teachers to be mentors to the kids. So if your goal as a teacher is just to deliver information, I don't think you should be a teacher. I don't think that should be your job anymore because there's a better way for information to be delivered by far. I love teaching, but I don't want to teach someone a concept when they could have learned it fast like that. And I can now spend time talking about the why behind the concept. I'm still going to teach, but I'm going to teach more about why do we need to know Bernoulli's principle? Who was Bernoulli? Who was Daniel Bernoulli? By the way, for those on the call, do you know that Bernoulli was a medical doctor? Daniel Bernoulli was a medical doctor, but he always wanted to do physics and engineering. So he used his knowledge of work in fluid dynamics as a doctor. That's actually what partly happened. He never really saw patients, from what I know, because he kind of pivoted into physics and engineering. And Bernoulli gave someone else a chance to come and work with him in Russia. That person's name was Leonhard Euler, the greatest mathematician. Euler came and met Bernoulli in Russia. What is one of the best countries in math today? Russia. Have you ever thought about the fact that Bernoulli and Euler are part of the reason for that? Isn't that crazy? Like, Euler, why didn't you come to Nigeria? What's the deal? Anyways, that's another day story. But the point is, parents, there's only one way for your child to actually get educated in the age of AI. Make them like Isaac Newton. That's the only hope. And what do I mean by this? What I mean is make them curious, make them problem solvers, make them not just say, oh, I got the answers in the back of the book, I'm good. No. Newton went after problems. So, Dr. Swafford, the reason why I bring that up is because this current education system is kind of like you're learning how to multiply numbers, and now we give you a calculator, and we still ask you the same types of multiplication problems before we give you a calculator. That doesn't make any sense. Like, it's too easy. AI makes current education too easy. It's too easy. It's like, seriously, what's the capital of Nigeria? Really? Are you going to ask those kind of questions anymore? That's not the issue anymore. The question is, let's go deeper in how we teach. So that leads me to a point, and then we can wrap up. And my point is, sorry, I want you to respond, and then we can wrap up. Dr. Swafford, I want to help build that startup school that trains startup thinkers. I want to see that, and I actually mean it. I've been listening to Myron Golden, and I've been learning how to think a little better on things. And the point I bring there is we need a solution that gives startups a pool to pull from. And who are we trying to please in our current model of education? Like, who are we trying to please? Like, that's my concern. It's not solving practical problems. And who wins? Do you see my point? Who wins at the end of the day? The kids are not winning. The startups are not winning. So why don't we create a system that allows the students to win and the startups to win, and now there's greater abundance? Let's get it in Nigeria. Let's get it all across Africa. Let's get it in America, of a kind of school system that is focused on helping the child reach their potential. And maybe one of them becomes a startup accountant. Maybe one of them becomes a startup whatever. But the point is, I'm not saying they all have to be engineers, but they're all thinking like problem solvers and entrepreneurs. So that's one thing I want to pitch to you as your final remarks. I want to start this. A pre-K to 12th grade school, that the goal of the school is to train people to go out and be like the Elon Musks, or hopefully Elon and I, we have different views on certain things. I'm just saying, in terms of problem solving, Elon gets the gold medal on many levels, right? I'm not going to Mars. That's not happening. But can we get clean water all across Africa and electricity all across Africa? Like, can we get that in the next 5 years? Let these startups that we start do that. So give me some advice on that remark as we close. Amos is ready. He wants to do it. Where do I begin and what do I do?
Yeah, wow. So yeah, that's a big question. But again, I think it goes back to something we've said before, which is figuring out the problem. So if the problem is clean water in Africa in 5 years, right? Like it should be something that when you're going to people, not necessarily for funding, but if they say, what are you working on? Clean water in all of Africa in the next 5 years.
Yes.
This is something when you mention Elon, this is something that he's great at, given being able to inhabit Mars. Like he gives there's a sound bite there. Okay, we know what SpaceX is about. We're like we know what Tesla is about when it comes to electric cars, that type of thing. What's the problem? I don't particularly agree on uh, inhabiting Mars or having electric cars all over the place. That's not my problem. It's not something I care about. But if we're saying clean water in Africa, I think there are plenty of people that can get on board with that. Now, the thing about it is, what is it that's restricting clean water from Africa? This is, as an engineer, that's the first thing I'm going to be looking at. Well, what is the actual problem here? Because maybe it's a political problem and it's not an engineering problem. Whatever it is, I need to kind of drill down and figure out what is the problem. So the same thing with education. I think again, education gets back to education was created. You could speak to this more than I can, but my understanding is that with the Industrial Revolution, education was there to create workers for these factories. Well, the, we're not in the Industrial Revolution anymore, where we want to have people for factories. So then we should be, in my estimation, we should be adjusting based on what we need. What we need are more entrepreneurs and startups that are solving the problems that we're facing in society and in the world. And that's what engineers and entrepreneurs do. So our education system, it would make sense that be it should be crafted to accomplish that rather than accomplish something from the 17 1800s when they were looking for workers who would be able to be on time. You ring a bell and they go from this place to the next place, or now you go on your lunch break. They created a school system to create those workers. We don't need factory workers anymore. So if we need entrepreneurs and people that are working in a startup, then that should be what we are designing our education system for. And that's kind of what we're kind of advocating for here. In your case, I would say, is clean water the problem you're going to work on? Um, if that's the problem, then that makes things easier. I don't know that that's the problem you want to work on. I'm not exactly sure what the problem is for you. We'd have to talk more about that offline. I know that you're passionate about several things. I think you have to focus, and I
Yeah.
don't know what the focus is going to be on. And the problem with focus is that it means that there are a bunch of really interesting and there are problems that maybe you could solve and maybe you could work on that you have to say no to if you're going to focus. Focus isn't about the thing you say yes to. It's about all the stuff you have to say no to.
Yep.
And there are going to be real things that you could be working on that if you're focused, you're going to say, no, I'm not doing that because we're working on getting clean water in Africa. So it means that I can't work on this thing that's really cool and that's really interesting. Um, so that's what I would say for for you. And so um, I don't know if that answered your question, but
Well, it does. It does. And I look forward to some of the things you think I should focus on offline. And we'll
yeah,
talk
but that's
about
the
that.
thing. One of the things I would say to you is it's not things, it's thing.
Yes.
And,
Oh, the
and
thing. Sorry.
when you say, well, when we're talking about focus, it's going to mean thing, and it's going to mean saying no to all of these other really interesting things.
Yep.
And that's hard. But what I would say is the thing that Good. This is a year of focus for me. If I focus all of my energy and time on this thing, I'll get there faster. And then maybe there's a next thing. Or maybe you find that those other things you thought you'd be interested in, you're not interested in at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, clearly I could tell you, and then I want you to share where they can find your stuff too, your book and everything. But I can tell you, Dr. Swafford, that um, the young people and seeing them flourish clearly is what Amos wants to see. All the stuff about clean water and electricity, hopefully some of the people he pours into, some of them
Yeah.
can deal with that, right? So I feel like that is my thing. I
Yeah.
want to see young people flourish, right? And ultimately grow in the truth and in the Bible and in God's word. Like I want to see them flourish. And so yeah, that's part of what I think it is. I don't know why I bring up Isaac Newton a lot. He's not my favorite guy. I mean, he's not my favorite physicist. I'm a James Clerk Maxwell and Euler guy. That those are my people. And I think why I love them so much is also because I've seen them flourishing in that which they believe they were called to do. So ultimately, I want to see people flourish. That's it. So it's kind of like John Maxwell, Zig Ziglar. They do a little bit of that in their own way, but I want people to flourish and solve problems in their communities, no matter where they live. Because if people flourish, it overflows, if you see what I mean. So maybe that's part of the thing. So, anyways, you guys got a free taste of Dr. Swafford getting Amos to think straight on things. Thank you. So, Dr. Swafford, where can they find you, and what's your book, and what book are you working on as we wrap up?
Sure. So you can, if you look at, I have the easy one to remember instead of, so there's my name, jerryswafford.com. You can go there, but if you just go to jerryleephd.com, that will give you links to my YouTube channel and my website. And I wrote a book that's called I Walk, Therefore I Am. Why walking on, or how walking on two legs proves that God exists. So this is a book that I had in me as I was going through the PhD, and I finished it last year. I'm currently working on a book that is probably going to be called something like The Bible Stands. I'm thinking that it's going to be like a trilogy. It's like I Walk, Therefore I Am, The Bible Stands, and then something like, the sun sits, meaning speaking of Jesus Christ sitting on the throne. It'll be like something like that. It'll be like a trilogy that speaks to the existence of God, the inspiration of the Bible, and the deity of Jesus Christ. I think that's kind of what this is going to turn into, a trilogy like that. So
Yeah.
I walk, therefore I am, the Bible stands, the sun sits, something like that. But right now I'm working on that second book in that, where I really want to just point out um, how the Bible is ultimately true, and so much of our science is catching up to the Bible constantly, and so much of what we have called science in the past, it has been wrong when the Bible has been right repeatedly. And so it's basically a book about that. So if that's the kind of something that you're interested in right now, I am not focused on that, so it's kind of to the side. So it's in free time I might do some things on it, but until it becomes the focus, I don't want to say that it's coming out at a certain time. Right now, I am really saying, hey, I need to say no to some things in order to say yes to the thing I should be working on. So even with the podcast, I've kind of taken off from the podcast as well, to focus on some things I need to get squared away. So that's so so if you're wanting to get in touch with me, you can do that. My email address is Jerry, Jerry, at jerryswafford.com. So JerrySwafford.com. So you can get in touch with me that way as well. Just really good to see young people that on a Saturday morning or afternoon that care about engineers. Like sometimes, uh, like I was a nerd in high school and I was never doing stuff like this. So the fact that there are people like Amos that are doing this for you, it's I hope you understand what this is, and you take full advantage of it, of what he's doing. So
Well,
I think
thank you.
that's it. I think
Well,
that's all
thank
I've
you
got.
so much. Thank you so much, brother. I'm going to stop the live stream and just give the two guys who wanted to
Sure.
jump on to say hi to you, and then we'll log off. So let me stop the recording.